folks, Dr. Robert Barrington here with some more nutrition advice. Now, I wanted to do a video today that addresses a question that I get asked quite a lot really. And the question is, why do supplements work for one group of people or one individual, but they don't work for somebody else? I get a lot of questions that, for example, respond to my anxiety videos, and they say, you know, I've taken this supplement, it's supposed to be an anti-anxiety agent, it's supposed to be an anxiolytic, but when I took it, I actually felt an increase in anxiety. And this is quite common. I get this question quite a lot, and I get this response quite a lot, and my opinion is that we don't really understand many of these compounds and how they work, and they work in different ways in different people. That's a very broad answer. If you only want to watch the first 20 seconds of this video, that will really encompass the rest of the video. But I do want to go into some specific examples, and I do want to give some more detail for those people that are interested in understanding how this actually may work. Anecdotally, anxiety and depression, mood disorders are very difficult to treat, but it's the same for many other disorders. Treating things with nutrition is not an exact science. Looking at the scientific literature can give clues, but science is not an all-encompassing oracle. It is just parts of evidence that need to be put together. This is what people need to understand, that just because a scientific paper comes to a conclusion doesn't mean that that is necessarily a fact. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the truth. It's just a piece of evidence that you have to take, and you have to put it in the context of other pieces of evidence. So what are some of the mechanisms whereby supplements cannot work for an individual? There are many. We all have our own biochemical individuality. We have our own genetics. We produce different levels of different enzymes. We all have slightly different shaped stomachs. We all have slightly different intestines. And this can all have an influence on the way that foods and nutrients are used and metabolized in our tissues. But there is one area of our intestine that is very variable, and it's very variable between individual humans, and it can vary for a number of reasons. For genetic reasons, it can vary from environmental reasons, and that is the microbiota that we have in our guts. The microbiota are made up of mainly of bacteria. There are yeast and other organisms in there as well, and the exact type of bacteria that you have that make up your microbiota will depend on what you've eaten. It will depend on your genetics. It will depend on your environmental exposure to things like pesticides, and it will also depend whether you've taken antibiotics. And let's not forget that certain chemicals within plants are also antibiotics, and that will therefore affect the microbiota. So, for example, it is known that those people that eat high amounts of dairy products may have higher amounts of acidophilus type bacteria in their microbiota. Now, no one knows what the correct ratio of different types of bacteria are within a microbiota, and there probably isn't one. It's very likely that there isn't one. Everybody will have the microbiota that is healthy for themselves, and everybody will come to become in equilibrium with those microorganisms in their gut. But those microorganisms are absolutely essential to their metabolism. They're absolutely essential to the correct digestion of many of the nutrients. Now, I think this is one of the areas of study that's going to become more popular in the future, and I think that it's already trends in the scientific literature already heading in that direction, whereby people are researching how different ratios of different microbiota, different bacteria in the gut affect the metabolism and the absorption of particular nutrients. I've already done some videos on Equol. Equol is a compound that can be produced in the gut from particular flavonoids, from the isoflavones, and some people produce Equol and some people don't. And Equol appears to have metabolically active effects in humans. Now, obviously, if you don't produce Equol, you don't benefit from those metabolically active metabolites. And this is just one example of the way that certain supplements can work for certain individuals. Now, Equol is produced from the isoflavonoids, the isoflavones, but I wanted to actually give an example of quite an interesting study that was done that looked at the flavonols, quercetin and kaempferol. Now, quercetin and kaempferol are flavonols. That means they belong to the flavonoid group of phytochemicals, Being flavonols, they are quite common in foods. Quercetin in particular is a very common flavonoid. It's found in high concentrations in wine, in apples, in tea. It's one of the most common flavonoids. If you look at all of the flavonoids in the diet, quercetin is always one of the most common. Camphorol is not quite so common, but it is commonly found in things like broccoli, particularly things like endive, what we call the green vegetables. That's where you find camphorol. So those people that eat a high plant food diet, eat lots of apples, drink red wine, maybe they have regular salads, spinach, they have broccoli, they would have reasonable high amounts of quercetin and camphorol in their diet. Now, quercetin and camphorol have been investigated quite extensively for their anti-anxiety effects in humans. They have been shown to have anti-anxiety effects, and this work has been done on animals and humans. It's not exactly sure how flavonoids affect anxiety, but it's thought that what happens is the flavonoid is able to interact in some way with the GABA receptor, the GABA A receptor, which is also sometimes called the benzodiazepine receptor. And in that respect, these compounds may work very similar to the benzodiazepine drugs. They may increase the release of GABA, and that would in turn have an inhibitory effect on neuronal activity in the brain, and that would calm the brain and have a general overall calming effect on the person. Now, it's very interesting that it's known that flavonoids are very highly, extensively metabolized in the gut. It's contentious as to whether quercetin and camphorol actually get into the body as quercetin and camphorol. It may be that they only get into the body as metabolites of quercetin and camphorol. The enterocytes are very, very efficient at metabolizing quercetin to camphorol, and they often produce metabolites like sulfites or glucuronides, which are metabolites that they're more water soluble. The body's better able to deal with them, and what the body is actually trying to do is trying to excrete them. It thinks they're foreign chemicals. The body doesn't want them, and in the process of metabolism, sometimes it accidentally creates compounds that are actually beneficial to the human tissues. But there's another way that quercetin and camphorol are metabolized, and they can be metabolized in the colon, and they can be metabolized by our gut bacteria. And what actually happens when camphorol and quercetin are metabolized is they produce something called hydroxyphenyl acetic acids. Now, the hydroxyphenyl acetic acid from camphorol is called para-hydroxyphenyl acetic acid, and the hydroxyphenyl acetic acid from quercetin is called 3,4-dihydroxyphenyl acetic acid. So those are the two hydroxyphenyl acetic acids that are produced from camphorol and quercetin, and all flavonols can be metabolized into these hydroxyphenyl acetic acids, and there is evidence that these are then absorbed. Now, there was a study that was done on mice that actually looked at the ability of quercetin and camphorol to treat anxiety. And what they did is they injected intraperineally, they injected quercetin and camphorol into the mice, and it did not have any anxiolytic effects. It didn't affect the mice, the behaviour of the mice when they were exposed to stress, and there was no anxiolytic effect. However, when they gave the camphorol and the quercetin orally, the mice did experience an anxiolytic effect from the quercetin and the camphorol. And the researchers put this down to the fact that it wasn't the quercetin and the camphorol that was actually having the effect. It was actually the hydroxyphenyl acetic acid metabolites that were produced in the gut by the bacteria that were then absorbed, that were then having an effect on the mice and giving them an anxiolytic effect. To be able to confirm this, what they did is they actually took the hydroxyphenyl acetic acids and they injected them in the same way as they had done the quercetin and the camphorol, and when they did that, they found there was an anxiolytic effect, which indicates it was actually these compounds that were having the anxiolytic effect, not actually the parent compound quercetin and camphorol. To confirm this further, what they did is they then gave the mice antibiotics to kill their gut. They sterilised their gut bacteria, their gut, so there was no bacteria in there at all. They then gave them the quercetin and camphorol, and again there was no anxiolytic effect. Because they'd removed the bacteria, there was no conversion to hydroxyphenyl acetic acids, and therefore there was no compound to have that anxiolytic effect. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that it's often not the supplement itself that has the effect, but a metabolite of it. And if you require your gut bacteria to be able to cause that metabolism, and you don't have gut bacteria because you've taken antibiotics, or you have a different gut bacteria that don't have the metabolizing enzymes, you may not be able to use that supplement. Clearly, if you've just taken antibiotics and you eat a high plant food diet and you expect that to have an effect on your mental health and elevate your mood because of the quercetin and camphor in it, you may be disappointed because you haven't got the production of those hydroxyphenylacetic acids. That's just one example. If you put it with the Equal example from the isoflavones, these compounds are obviously very complex. They are metabolized. Our liver is a very important area of metabolism in our body, but people forget how important our gut bacteria are. Our gut bacteria produce many of the compounds that have been found to subsequently be very beneficial to our health. For example, gut bacteria produce the short chain fatty acids that are thought to be beneficial to cholesterol metabolism. Without that gut bacteria, without those bacteria producing those short chain fatty acids, we don't have that effect. Now, this doesn't mean this is the only explanation for why supplements work, but it is very interesting that a lot of people who have taken antibiotics actually tell me that they went through a bout of anxiety after they'd had the course of antibiotics. And what I would suggest is happening is that I've made this contentious point before. I don't know whether it's my theory or whether other people have come up with this before, but I actually feel we're actually in some kind of relationship with plants in our diets. I believe that plants are necessary in our diets. I think there's enough evidence to show that humans are omnivores. We do eat plants. We should eat plants. I do feel plant foods are necessary in the diet, and I feel that those plants provide certain phytochemicals to our diet that are essential. And one of the group of phytochemicals they produce has an effect on our mental health, and that includes the flavonoids as well as others like the triterpenes. These chemicals are part of our diet. They're part of our physiology. Just as we require gut bacteria, we require these plants to produce these chemicals, and that keeps our mood stable. They interact with our brain tissue, and the normal condition is one of us eating plants and having this mood stability. When we take antibiotics, we're removing the gut bacteria that produce some of the beneficial compounds from those plants, and that stops the plants, stops us absorbing those compounds because they're not there, and that affects our mood. And this is why I've done a video before to show that doxycycline taking doxycycline is associated with depression. There's a lot of evidence that antibiotics cause depression, and I believe these gut bacteria are absolutely pivotal to producing compounds that are required for mood stabilization. And this may be one of the reasons why certain individuals get different results from different types of anxiolytic and antidepressant compounds in plants and in supplements. It might relate to the way they are metabolized. Now, clearly, like I say, that's not the only reason. We all have genetically different enzymes in our livers. We all excrete compounds at different rates. But if you extrapolate that type of effect over the entire body or through all of the tissues, I think you can see that the genetic differences would be significant, and therefore what works for one person may not work for another person. And this is really why I set up my YouTube channel, and what I'm trying to get people to do is to try and understand some of the nuances of nutrition, try and understand some of the concepts so that they can apply those concepts to their own nutrition to be able to become their own nutritionist. Because really, the only person that is ever going to be able to treat yourself is yourself. It's very easy for me to give you advice and I can guide you, and it's the same with any nutritionist, but ultimately I don't know what you're feeling. I don't know how a compound affects you. It's very difficult for somebody on the outside, particularly when you're dealing with mental health, to understand how someone on the inside is feeling. And so those people that watch my videos on anxiety and depression, this applies particularly to you. If something doesn't work for you, you have to understand that that doesn't mean that there isn't something out there that will work. What works for one person may not work for another. So I keep saying this, you have to try something for a while. If it doesn't work, abandon it and don't be afraid to move on to something else. There are many, many compounds that have been researched in terms of their ability to help mental health, and there is no shortage of different compounds to try. And what you need to do is find the combination or the single element in plants that works for you. Some people may find that they're helped by just generally eating a plant diet. Some people may find that onions in particular help them. Some people may find that a GABA supplement is helpful. Some people may prefer a different amino acid like L-tryptophan. And I think this really stems also from the fact that mood disorders are not single entities. There is a scale of a mood disorder. Anxiety and depression both overlap, so it's very difficult to separate the two. Often anxiety can actually be caused by depression, and it can be a secondary component of the depression. Sometimes they can be distinct. Clearly there is not a single type of anxiety. There are multiple different types of anxiety. Some of them need to be treated by a sedative to be able to calm the person down. Some of them need to be treated in a slightly different way. In other words, maybe not as a direct sedative effect, but perhaps more of just a general calming effect. And this is why compounds have, different compounds become useful for different types of anxiety. So when you watch a video on anxiety and depression, don't think of anxiety as a single disorder. It's not. Even the generalized anxiety disorder, which is sometimes called GAD, has a spectrum of different symptoms, and they're not always present in all people. But certainly obsessive compulsive disorder is clearly distinct from post-traumatic stress disorder, yet they are both types of anxiety. Clearly GAD is different from both of, is clearly different from post-traumatic stress disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder. So anxiety is not just a single disorder, and therefore there are different compounds to treat the different types of anxiety. And the same is true for depression. Not only is depression classed as mild, moderate and severe, but within mild depression or moderate depression there are different types of depression, how they come on, how they affect the person, and they're to do with different types of changes in the different brain chemistry changes that can overlap. And they can be classified as being called depression, but they're often not the same disorder. And this is another reason why you can't particularly predict what compound is going to help a particular person. So the individual biochemistry and the fact that there are different disorders to treat mean that it's not actually always very easy to predict what's going to happen with a particular compound. And this is the same for pharmaceutical drugs. It's been found, for example, that you can give a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor to somebody with anxiety and it will help them. You can give the same drug to somebody else with apparently similar symptoms and it will actually make them worse. And this is the same for nutrients. It's just that nutrients tend to be safer, so the negative effects are less. When you tend to get a negative effect with a drug, it does tend to be quite severe, and that dip in anxiety you may get, the increase in anxiety has been shown in research to actually increase, in some cases, suicide rates in certain people taking these drugs, particularly the young. So they're quite severe changes, which is why doctors are always very careful to monitor you when they put you on these type of antidepressant drugs. They do know that they can change your brain chemistry, and in some people that can be detrimental. And really, nutrients are no different. It's just that their effects are more mild, and therefore their side effects are more mild. So really, what's the conclusion to this video? Well, the conclusion is what I've always trying to say. You've got to be your own nutritionist. You've got to try these compounds and assess them, whether they actually work. And there's also a temporal component. They may work 1 year and they may not work the next year. You change, you grow, your genetics change as you grow. So don't be afraid to change something if it stops working, or don't be afraid to try something if you haven't tried it for a while. Sometimes you can try things in a different dose or in a different way, or from a different supplier, and it does actually have a difference. But really, you've got to be your own nutritionist. You've got to study nutrition. You've got to understand the nuances of it, and you've got to be able to understand yourself ultimately and see, be honest with yourself about introspective thinking about how the nutrients are actually helping you. So I hope you found that interesting. As always, eat well, stay healthy and protect yourself, and I will see you soon for another video. Take care.